We were just an ordinary family, like any other. At least, that's what I believed. A white house in a quiet suburban neighborhood. Taking care of the lawn was my husband Mark's weekend job, and by the front entrance, the lavender I'd planted bloomed with purple flowers. I, Rebecca Torres, work from home as a freelance graphic designer. Since most of my client communication happens online, I have plenty of time for my family. The perfect work-life balance. That's what I thought. Mark works as a middle manager at a large construction company. Recently there'd been talk of a promotion, and when he came home he'd increasingly share the news with obvious pleasure. A serious, responsible husband. I believed he was a good father to our son too. And then there was our son, Tyler. 14 years old, quiet, and fond of reading. He wasn't particularly good at sports, but his grades weren't bad. He wasn't the type to have lots of friends, but I thought that was just his personality. Lately, I'd felt like Tyler had changed a bit. He'd become more silent than before, barely talking at dinner anymore. He spent more time shut up in his room, and it seemed like he was eating less. But I didn't think deeply about it. It's because he's going through puberty, isn't it? Boys are like that. That's what I told myself. One evening at dinner, Mark came home from work in an unusually good mood. I talked with the department head today, and apparently the promotion discussion is moving forward. I looked at my husband's smile and felt genuinely happy. That's wonderful. Your hard work is paying off. On the table sat roast chicken, salad, and mashed potatoes. Our usual family dinner scene. But Tyler just silently moved his fork around, not joining the conversation. Mark turned his attention to our son. Tyler, you should follow your old man's example. You keeping up with school? Our son answered in a small voice. Yeah. His voice was so quiet it was barely audible. I became a little worried and asked. You haven't seemed yourself lately. Is something wrong? Tyler answered without looking up. Nothing's wrong. I didn't pursue it further. Teenagers don't open up to their parents. That's what I thought. It wouldn't be good to force it out of him. He'll talk eventually. Thinking that way, I changed the subject. The conversation ended there, and dinner continued quietly as usual. The next afternoon, I was working on a logo design for a client at my home desk. While I was making detailed adjustments on the computer screen, my cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, is this the Torres residence? Yes, it is. Tyler has been in an accident. My heart nearly stopped. What? What do you mean? He's being transported to the hospital by ambulance now. Can you come right away? My mind went blank. My hands were shaking, and I almost dropped the phone. An accident, what happened? We'll explain the details at the hospital. Please hurry. The call ended. I frantically called Mark. The phone rang several times before my husband finally answered. I'm in an important meeting right now. Tyler's been in an accident. Come to the hospital immediately. What? What do you mean? I don't know. The school called and said he was taken by ambulance. I heard Mark sigh on the other end of the line. Okay. I'm on my way. I grabbed my car keys and rushed out of the house. While driving, the content of that phone call repeated in my head over and over. My foot on the accelerator was trembling. Every time the light turned red, my irritation and anxiety mounted. Hurry, I have to hurry. My son is waiting. My son, my precious Tyler. The palms gripping the steering wheel were damp with sweat. I tried to take deep breaths, but couldn't breathe properly. A tightening sensation in my chest. Tyler, it's okay. It'll definitely be okay. It's nothing serious. He'll recover soon. I'm sure of it. But the school's voice had been serious. An ambulance. Those words wouldn't leave my mind. I finally pulled into the hospital parking lot. I don't even remember if I parked properly. I just got out of the car and ran. Even the automatic doors at the entrance seemed too slow to open. I rushed to the reception counter. My son, Tyler Torres, where is he? He's the boy brought in from the middle school. A nurse in a white coat looked at me with a calm face. But there was sympathy in her eyes. He's in surgery. Please wait in this waiting room. Surgery? Surgery, what does that mean? Is my son okay? The doctor will explain everything later. Please, this way. Guided by the nurse, I entered the waiting room. White walls, the smell of disinfectant, the sound of the clock's second hand. Everything felt unreal. Like I was having a bad dream. I sat in a chair but couldn't stay still. I stood up, sat down again, stood up again. In surgery. My son was undergoing surgery right now. What kind of surgery? How serious were his injuries? Someone tell me. I don't know how much time passed. The entrance door opened and Mark came rushing in. Still in his suit, his tie slightly loosened. Rebecca. Tyler. He's still in surgery. Surgery? What the hell happened? I shook my head. I don't know. The school said it was an accident. Mark sank into a waiting room chair. He covered his face with both hands and let out a deep breath. I heard he fell from the roof. The roof. What would Tyler be doing on the roof? The roof? That can't be. The words wouldn't come. The roof. My son. Why? Was it an accident? Or was it? Mark swallowed his words. But I understood what my husband was trying to say. No way. That can't be. Tyler wouldn't. No, it's different. It's absolutely not that. My son is a bright kid. He got a little quiet, but that's all. It's because of puberty. Just puberty. We both fell silent. Only the hands of the waiting room clock coldly marked the time. How long had passed? My sense of time was numb. The operating room door opened. A doctor in green surgical scrubs came out and walked toward us. Are you the Torres family? We both stood up at the same time. Yes, we are. My son, how is my son? The doctor's expression was stern. That alone told me it was bad news. The surgery was successful. His life is not in danger. For a moment, relief spread through my chest. But the doctor immediately continued. However, he has serious injuries to his head and chest. The head trauma in particular is severe. His consciousness, does my son have consciousness? He's currently in a coma. Coma. I couldn't immediately grasp the meaning of that word. A coma, when will he wake up? The doctor paused briefly, then said quietly. To be honest, the chances of him waking up are low. The brain damage is quite extensive. It felt like the world was crumbling. Like the floor beneath my feet was disappearing and I was falling into darkness. That can't be. You're lying. Tell me it's a lie. My voice was shaking. Tears welled up and wouldn't stop. Mark had his hand against the wall, standing there in a daze. The color had drained from his face, it was completely white. We'll do everything we can. However, you should prepare yourselves. The doctor said this and bowed deeply. Why? Why did this happen? Until yesterday, my son was right there. He was definitely there. Even though he'd become quiet, he was alive. Breathing, eating, living. But now he's in a coma. The chances of him waking up are low. That can't be. How can that be? As I was about to collapse into the waiting room chair, a uniformed police officer approached. Mrs. Torres. Regarding your son's case, there are a few things I'd like to ask you. Mark looked up. It was an accident, right? It was an accident, wasn't it? The police officer seemed to be choosing his words carefully. At this point, we're processing it as a fall accident. However, what? We're also investigating the possibility of suicide. Suicide. That word stabbed into my chest like a sharp knife. No way. Tyler would never do such a thing. That's absolutely impossible. But the officer's expression didn't change. Has there been any change in your son's behavior recently? He got a little quiet, that's all. What about his situation at school? I don't know. But we hadn't heard about any particular problems. Mark spoke up. Was there some kind of trouble at school? That's also part of our current investigation. We'll contact you as soon as we know anything. The officer said this and left. Suicide. That word repeated over and over in my head. No way. But Tyler's recent behavior. Getting quiet, shutting himself in his room. Could something have happened? Something that drove my son to the edge. I hadn't noticed anything. Even though I'm his mother. Even though we saw each other every day. I was completely oblivious to my son's cries for help. Mark was sitting in the chair with his head in his hands. His shoulders were trembling slightly. We'll call you when you can visit him. The nurse's voice sounded distant. All we could do was wait. Several hours later, we were finally allowed to visit. Guided by the nurse, we headed to the intensive care unit. My steps down the hallway were heavy. Would I really be able to see my son? I wanted to see him, yet I didn't want to. Complex feelings swirled in my chest. I stopped in front of the intensive care unit door. Are you ready? The nurse asked gently. I nodded slightly. There was no way I could be ready. But I had to go. The door opened. The moment I saw my son lying in the bed, the strength drained from my knees. Tyler. My son. That child. Tubes were connected all over his body. For drip, oxygen mask, heart monitor. The beep, beep, beep of the machine echoed regularly. His face was swollen and covered with bandages. My son's face with closed eyes looked like he might be sleeping, but that stillness was far too unnatural. Tyler. My voice trembled, just calling his name took everything I had. Tears overflowed. I tried to hold them back, but couldn't stop them. From behind, Mark came in. My husband also stood frozen at the sight of our son. He couldn't move from in front of the door. Eventually Mark slowly approached the bedside. He reached out a trembling hand and touched our son's hand. Tyler. It's Dad. His voice was so weak it seemed like it might disappear at any moment. Suddenly, Mark's shoulders began to shake violently. A sob escaped. My husband was crying. It was the first time I'd seen my husband cry so intensely. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What was he apologizing for? For not being able to protect our son? Or was there some other reason? Mark. When I called out to him, my husband suddenly stood up. I need to step outside for a bit. He said this and left the hospital room, covering his face with his hands. I could hear my husband's crying from the hallway too. I was confused. Of course, it's natural to be shocked by our son's condition. But that way of crying, it was as if he was blaming himself for something. That's how it looked. Alone in the hospital room, I sat in the chair next to the bed. I stared intently at my son's face. Until yesterday, my son was definitely there. Now he's like this. Tyler. It's Mom. Can you hear me? No answer. Only the sound of the machine, echoing regularly. Mom's here, sweetheart. I'll stay right by your side. I gently took my son's hand. It was cold. But there was definitely warmth. He's alive. This child is alive. The moment I held his hand, I felt something strange. Something hard. There was something hard in his palm. What is this? Looking at Tyler's palm, I saw his fingers were tightly clenched. As if desperately clutching something. Tyler, what are you holding? I tried to gently open his fingers. But they were clenched so tight they wouldn't open easily. Carefully, I opened them one by one. And when his palm opened, a small piece of paper was taped there. What is this? My heartbeat quickened. Why was there paper in my son's hand? When? Who? I carefully peeled off the tape. My fingertips were trembling and I couldn't remove it well. Finally the tape came off and I opened the paper. Written there in shaky handwriting was something. Mom, open my closet. My breath stopped. This was Tyler's handwriting. No mistake about it. That slightly rounded handwriting from when he does his homework. But when did he write this? Why was it taped to his palm? I read the note again. Mom, open my closet. The closet. The closet in my son's room. What's in there? I looked at my son's face. An unconscious, quiet face. But this note was definitely written by my son. He's trying to tell me something. Why? What for? What's in the closet? My hands were shaking. The hand holding the paper was trembling like it wasn't even mine. My son, what is he hiding? What is he trying to show me? Anxiety swelled in my chest. Could this be a suicide note? No, it's different. If it were a suicide note, it would be written differently. This means there's something he wants me to find. What is it? Events at school. The possibility of suicide the police mentioned. My son's recent changes. It felt like everything was connected. But I didn't understand how. I have to open the closet. I made up my mind. When I get home, I'll open the closet right away. Whatever my son wants me to find must be there. Tyler, I understand. Mom will open the closet. I held my son's hand once more. This time, gently but firmly. Whatever's in there, Mom will be okay. I'll protect you. Only the sound of the machine continued to echo, unchanged. After a while, Mark returned to the hospital room. His eyes were red and swollen. Rebecca, I'll stay here tonight. You go home and rest. But, please. If you collapse too, Tyler will worry. At my husband's words, I nodded. That's right, I have to go home. I have to open the closet. Okay. Then I'll go home for now. Before leaving the room, I looked back at my son once more. Tyler, I'll be back soon. I left the hospital, clutching the note tightly. While driving, the words from the note repeated in my head. Mom, open my closet. What's in there, Tyler? What do you want to show me? I arrived home after 9 at night. The empty house was completely silent. I turned on the entrance light and took off my shoes. These were usual actions, but today everything looked different. I climbed the stairs. One step at a time. Only my footsteps echoed. I stood in front of Tyler's room. I put my hand on the doorknob. Slowly opened it. The room smelled like my son. On the bookshelf, half-read books were lined up. On the desk, a homework notebook lay open. Just a few days ago, my son had been here. The closet was in the back of the room. I took a deep breath. Then I put my hand on the closet door. Tyler, Mom's opening it now. I opened the door. Clothes were hanging. Jackets, shirts, pants. The familiar sight. But there was something in the back, behind the clothes. I pushed the clothes aside and looked in the back. There was a box. A cardboard box. Sealed with tape. I reached out and pulled out the box. It was heavier than I expected. I sat down on the floor and peeled off the tape. Opened the box lid. Inside, it was packed with a large amount of things. A smartphone. Photographs. A notebook. I began taking them out one by one with trembling hands. The first thing I picked up was the smartphone. Tyler's old cell phone. I was sure it was the one he'd stopped using last year when he got a new model. But why had he hidden this in a box? When I pressed the power button, the screen lit up. It still had charge. Which meant he'd been using it recently. I opened the lock screen. The password was our son's birthday. It opened right away. On the screen, several audio files were saved. Looking at the dates, they were all from the past few months. I played the first file. After some rustling noise, I heard a voice. "Your dad's one of my old man's subordinates, right?" An unfamiliar boy's voice. But that voice was dripping with mockery and superiority. "If you tell on us, he'll get fired." "Stop it." Tyler's voice. Trembling. Frightened. "Don't cry, you wimp." Laughter. Multiple boys laughing. Then, a dull sound. The sound of hitting. Ugh. My son's pained voice. Look, he's crying." My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the smartphone. What is this? Bullying. My son was being bullied. I opened the next file. A different date. But the content was the same. Violence. Mockery. My son's screams. Over and over. This had been happening repeatedly. I put down the smartphone and picked up the photographs. The moment I saw the first photo, a voiceless scream escaped my throat. Tyler's body. A picture showing my son's body with his shirt off. From his chest to his arms, covered in blue bruises. Painfully blue bruises. When did he get bruises like these? The next photo. Tyler locked in a locker. My son sitting in that cramped space, knees pulled up. Who took this? Did the bullies take it for fun? The next photo. Tyler having water dumped on him in the bathroom. Soaking wet uniform. My son sitting on the floor, face down. Tears overflowed and the photos became blurry. How could this happen? To my son. Finally, I picked up the notebook. A diary. Written densely in Tyler's handwriting. I opened the pages with trembling hands. September 15th, Brandon hit me again today. I don't know why. Just because he felt like it. I can't take it anymore. Brandon. I recognized that name. He was the son of Mark's boss, if I remembered right. We'd had dinner together as families a few times. That boy. The next page. September 20th. I talked to Dad. But Dad said, just put up with it. Why? Why do I have to put up with it? What? He talked to Mark. My son had asked his father for help. My hands were shaking. But I had to keep reading. September 25th. I talked to Dad again. I thought for sure he'd help me this time. But Dad said Brandon's father is my boss. Don't cause trouble. Dad cares more about getting promoted. More than he cares about me. No. That can't be. It's a lie, isn't it? October 3rd. I can't talk to anyone anymore. I don't want to worry Mom. Mom always seems so busy, and I don't want to burden her with my problems. I'm sorry, Tyler. I'm so sorry. You should have told me. The last page. The date was 1 week ago. October 10th. Maybe dying is the only way out. Dad abandoned me. I'm scared to go to school. Every day is hell. But I want Mom, at least Mom, to know the truth. That's why I'm leaving this. Mom, I'm sorry. I dropped the diary on the floor. All the strength drained from my body. My son was suffering so much. He was asking for help. Mark. Did you know that our son was being bullied? And you looked the other way. For a promotion. Anger welled up inside me. From deep in my chest, fierce anger surged. I stood up and grabbed my cell phone. I pressed Mark's number. The phone rang twice and my husband answered. Rebecca, what's wrong? Come home right now. But Tyler. Right now. I hung up. While waiting, I stared at the evidence scattered on the floor. The recordings. The photographs. The diary. Everything told the story of my son's suffering. Why couldn't I notice? I'm his mother. We saw each other every day. 30 minutes later, I heard the sound of the front door opening. Footsteps hurrying up the stairs. Mark entered the room. His face looked tired. What happened? Why are you so angry? I silently pointed to the evidence scattered on the floor. My husband's face changed color. The blood drained away. Where did you find? Tyler's closet. Our son wanted me to find them, so he hid them there. I picked up the diary and thrust it at my husband. I read all of this. You knew, didn't you? That Tyler was being bullied. Mark stood frozen, unable to say anything. 3 weeks ago, our son came to you for advice. He asked for help. But you did nothing. Wait, let me explain. Explain? Explain what? That you abandoned our son. My husband clutched his head and dropped to his knees. The promotion. The promotion? You sacrificed our son for a promotion. My voice was shaking. With anger and sadness, I could barely get the words out. Brandon's father is my direct supervisor. If I caused trouble now. So what? Is there anything more important than our son's life? Mark covered his face and began to cry. I'm sorry. It's like I killed him. That's right. You're the one who drove our son to this. Tyler asked his father for help. But you refused. So our son thought dying was his only option. My husband was sobbing. But right now, I couldn't feel sympathy. I gathered all the recordings, photographs, and diary. I'm reporting everything to the school and police tomorrow. Mark looked up. Wait. Brandon's father has power at the company. If you make this public, I don't care. Your job doesn't matter to me right now. Rebecca, please. Tyler believed in you. He thought his father would help him. But you chose your career. I put all the evidence in my bag. I'm not leaving this to you anymore. I'll protect our son. Mark couldn't say anything, just sat there on the floor. I left the room. Going down the stairs, tears wouldn't stop. Tyler, I'm sorry. If only Mom had noticed sooner. If only I'd been closer to you. But it'll be okay now. Mom will definitely bring the truth to light. I won't forgive the people who hurt you. And I won't forgive the person who abandoned you either. I walked out the front door and breathed in the cold night air. The next morning, I headed to the school. All the evidence was in my bag. I was shown to the principal's office and presented the audio recordings, photographs, and diary. The principal's face grew paler and paler. From there I went to the police station. I submitted everything to the detective in charge. The detective examined the evidence with a serious expression and promised to begin an investigation immediately. A few days later, Brandon and his friends were questioned at school. The evidence was irrefutable. The recordings, photographs, diary. Everything proved their guilt. Brandon received a suspension and a stern warning from the police. Brandon's father, Mark's boss, was also held accountable for his son's actions. It became an issue at the company, and he ended up being demoted. The talk of Mark's promotion naturally fell through. My husband found it difficult to stay at the company, and several weeks later decided to resign. It's only right. That's what my husband said. For the first time, he acknowledged his mistake. 6 months passed after that. Autumn had deepened and the trees were beginning to change color when we got a call from the hospital. There's been a change in Tyler's consciousness. When I rushed to the hospital room, my son's fingers were moving slightly. And then, slowly, his eyelids opened. Tyler. My son looked around with unfocused eyes. Then he found my face. Mom. A hoarse voice. But it was definitely my son's voice. Tears overflowed and wouldn't stop. Tyler. Thank God. I'm so glad. After several weeks of rehabilitation, my son gradually regained his speech. One day, when we were alone, my son asked, Mom, did you open the closet? I held my son's hand. Yes, I opened it. I saw everything. I'm sorry. For worrying you. Don't apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. Tears welled up in my son's eyes. I couldn't tell you. You always seemed so busy, and I didn't want to burden you with my problems. Tyler, that's not right. Mom would always make time for you. I wish you'd talk to me about anything. But when I told Dad, my son's voice choked. I know. It was all written in the diary. I hugged my son. It's okay now. Mom will protect you. I'll never let you go through that again. My son cried on my shoulder. Finally able to shed the tears he'd been holding back for so long. A few days later, Mark visited the hospital room. He said he wanted to be alone with our son, so I waited in the hallway. About 30 minutes later, Mark came out. His eyes were red and swollen. I talked to Tyler. I told him honestly that I'm the worst father. I didn't say anything. But Tyler said, we can start over. Mark wiped his tears. I found a new job. It's a small company, but it's work where I can value time with my family. This time, I want to be a real father. I looked at my husband. This person was also weak. He made a mistake. But now he was genuinely trying to make amends. It's going to take time. To rebuild trust. I know. But I won't give up. After that, we began moving forward little by little. What is family? I'd been wrong. I thought what mattered was playing the part of the perfect family. But what's truly important is noticing each other's pain. And protecting one another. One day, I was watching Tyler do walking training as part of his rehabilitation. His steps were still unsteady, but step by step, he was definitely moving forward. Mark and I supported our son on both sides. Tyler looked at us and smiled. Thank you. He said this and took another step forward. We're not perfect yet. But we won't hide things anymore. The pain, the weakness, everything laid bare. And still supporting each other. This is the beginning of our new family. Blood ties alone don't make a family. Actions create family.